And components are, they describe the behaviors you exhibit and the behaviors you expect or need from the people around you. And here, it tells a little about what kinds of jobs, what your interests are, the jobs that you are likely to end up in. And just to add that sometimes we talk about interests, it does not necessarily mean we are we're interested to do a particular job, but our interests could help us to deal with our challenges. So for example, if you find you have an interest in music, if you get quite stressed, that interest could help you to deal with those challenges. Can we go to the other second slide of this, Wendy? Which is the second part of this, which has to do with, right? So here, it also tells you, as I mentioned earlier, about careers. Depending on how you respond to the questions online and the reports you get, it could tell you whether, and my comment at this stage is that it's an American compendium. And so my concern is that, but what the validity and the reliability of this tool is that, they continue to test and they feel that it is still reliable. I mean, in terms of reliability for the individual, if you do one of these, unless you're involved in some real life-threatening situation, which creates some changes in your personality, so if you take it now and you take it 10 years from now with no major challenges along the way, you are likely to get roughly the same results. The validity is that they're testing over and over, and based on the data, they're saying, look, we're still in tune with what we're doing. But basically here, you have different groups of jobs, what they're calling community social services, business and finance, education, training and library, engineering and architecture, computer and mathematical science, protective services. So, just very quickly, what are the benefits to leaders? And, there are benefits to leaders which could be the same benefits for you as an individual. So it can create greater awareness among the leadership on how, as respondents, they are likely to relate to other people. So a manager is behaving in a particular way. And what I found is that men like to see data. So if you go to a male boss and say, you notice whatever, you might not get as much attention as much as if you brought the person some statistics and say, this is it. So it's useful, it's a tool that, and any assessment tool, by the way, it's useful for anyone. But in the case of men who always want to see some data, when they get put in some of these development programs, they don't want you maybe as a coach to say, anecdotally, this is what I've seen or your staff said. They want to see hard facts. So giving this kind of tool, using this kind of tool could help. And it would help team members because when you show, in some instances, as a team, people, the coach works with the team members, and I'm a red, you're a green, and all the attributes that come with that. The person say, oh, that's why, I have something to do. And, it takes so long, like a blue, takes a long time to think through things. And so it also helps in organization when you have big projects to do. It could be useful to say, well, depending on how the attributes of an individual, maybe this person not necessarily the best person to lead this exercise, because if you give someone who's a thinker, and mark you, I'm not saying a thinker is not useful, But if it's someone, if you have a project which you need to do very quickly, and you give it to someone who is a thinker, the person is going to think, and sometimes in the end, the deadlines are passed because the person is there thinking through who to give this to do, what is this person going to think if, whereas you need somebody who is action oriented and can take some decisions. It gives a quick overview of the motivational needs of the people who work for them as leaders, and it provides a common and neutral language for enabling team members to discuss individual differences. Okay, so those are some of the uses of the Berkman tool. Any questions? Any questions? Clear as mud. So we have listened to a bit that I have introduced, and also more so Rohan, that societies have evolved and work structures and organizations have evolved, emphasizing the need for varying skill sets. Experts and organizations have evidence that with the rise of technology and AI, there's a shift in skills needs, with soft skills being more critical than hard skills in some instances. In spite of the changes that AI brings, there are jobs that will not be fully taken over because of those especially soft skills needs, which are inherently human. There are several approaches that organizations can utilize to ensure the presence of those soft skills which are needed. And Bridge Excellence offers coaching and a specific assessment tool that has several attributes above and beyond other tools. If you want to learn more about the Berkman, you can set up an appointment with me, because I could actually show you that it looks at several other factors in one than some of the other individual tools. You know, some of them, they just look at personality, they just look at how you deal with conflict, for example. But Berkman has the ability to look at about 7 of these factors. So I thank you very much for listening to me. And if you have no questions, I'd like to hand over back to Wendy.
Thank you, Paulette, for that insightful presentation. Do we have any questions in the chat? You can pop the questions in the chat or in the question and answer, where Paulette can be able to respond to some of those questions. And what I want to highlight from the presentation is that what I've learned from the presentation basically is that the Berkman tool, the Berkman assessment tool, really helps you to show up in various ways. Also, it helps you to understand yourself and be able to show up in a way that you can understand, that you can see your blind spots, and you can see your areas of strength, and you can be able to better show up in your workplace or in business or in different settings that you find yourself in. Maybe just to ask a question, Paulette, on the Berkman, if you don't mind. You know, what is the process of getting into, I mean, how do I get to do the assessment?
Okay, so if you want to do an assessment, you need to reach out to me. Berkman has the rights to these questionnaires that we use. They train us, and we are considered professionals or consultants using their tools. And so we discuss. What I usually like to do is to spend some time just to brief the person a little bit about the tool, not to give away, because, all these questions, people tend to say, okay, well, I've learned what it is. Let me try to go and see now how I can actually skew the thing in my favor. But I just try to do a short discussion and to clarify and to respond to any queries that someone may have. And then they would need to, we have an agreement that I'm going to be providing the access to the questionnaire, which is on the Berkman's international system, and that I am going to be giving the feedback of the results. So the person does the questionnaire. I go in. I can't manipulate the data, but what I can do is set up the results based on, if it's a youngster who is doing something career related, then I would need to produce tables, pull out the information that is useful for career decision. But otherwise, it's getting the person to have the reports out, and then I send it back. In fact, the system, I put their email in the system, and the system sends it directly to the person. As the coach or as a professional, I have access to the results because I needed to I needed to explain what's on that document. Yes. But I have no right to share it. It's a confidential document. And then we talk about, I have a contract with Berkman where, I pay. So I could say to the person, okay, I can generate the report, give it to you. But before I give you the feedback, then you would need to pay, because the Berkman has, they request payment for the use of the questionnaire and their system. So there's a section of the payment for Berkman and a section for me.
So if I hear you clearly, in terms of the connection between soft skills and artificial intelligence, the Berkman assessment tool is able to highlight those areas in which you need to develop as a person, and is able to say, this is where you are good, and this is where you can leverage your skills. Because a lot of the time, you'll find that we think we know ourselves and we think this is my strength, but this tool is then able to help us based on the questionnaires that we respond to package the different areas of ourselves and be able to highlight those areas.
Right. And as I said earlier, soft skills, it's just that there is a renewed interest because in this new age that we're looking at, there's lots of emphasis on what is this AI going to do, and all this research that people are looking at. It's saying, okay, in some instances, when we remove some of these technical stuff, what's going to be left is your soft skills, your human skills, and so there's a need for development. So if you did a Berkman, and we would need to find some specific ways for working with individuals and teams. But certainly, right now, if your manager says these are some soft skills that you need to develop, and you do your Berkman and you see an alignment, you realize, oh, I'm always shouting at pushing people. That's something I have to work on. I'm a red, and I tend to be like that. So therefore, perhaps I need to find some way, and whether it's through coaching or learning or reading some materials, how can I be less hasty? How can I be less rude or whatever? There are the extremes of this. It should be able to help. So hopefully I've answered your question.
Yes, you have. If we don't have any further questions, I would like to invite the panelist, Rohan, and Andrea Beck. We do have some questions, 1 or 2 questions, I think, for Rohan from the chat that we probably have missed during the session. There was a question from Frank, which was directed to Rohan, where he was asking, is AI is irreversible